Welcome to Workplace Wake Up, your go-to podcast for practical employment law guidance. I'm Jennifer Shaw, the founder of Shaw Law Group, and I'm here to help HR professionals and leaders navigate the legal minefield of the modern workplace. Each week, we tackle real-world issues with clear advice and a little tough love. Let's get started. It is hot in Sacramento today, and tomorrow is my birthday. So I'm very excited about today. We're going to talk about investigations. You know, it's funny. I said last week, at some point, we're going to talk more about these investigation things that are happening that I'm worried about. And then when I sat down to think about today's topic, I thought that's the topic I want to talk about. We've talked about investigations in different ways during the however many years we've been doing this podcast, a while. We're on episode, 227. So we've been doing this a bit. But some weird stuff has been happening with investigations that I want to talk to you about. Here's the thing. If you're an HR consultant doing external investigations, make sure you're working with a lawyer. The Business and Professions Code says that only licensed attorneys and licensed private investigators can conduct third-party investigations, which is ridiculous in my opinion. Obviously, the HR lobbying group wasn't on top of this when the law was passed. But the fact of the matter is you need to be working under a lawyer or a private investigator if you are an HR consultant. Otherwise, you're violating the California Business and Professions Code and you put your client at risk. When you do these investigations, whether you're internal, you work for the company that needs you to do the investigation, or you're external, one of the things I'm seeing more and more of are people who take on too many investigations and then they can't get them done in a timely manner. And this drives me crazy. Like, I once had a lawyer say to me, well, do you want it done right or do you want it done fast? And I had to think about that for a minute. I said, I want both. I want it done efficiently and I want it done correctly. Now, I know that there's an inverse relationship there, right? The faster you go, the more likely it is you're going to make mistakes. You have to find your sweet spot. But I am tired of hearing from external investigators, and these are not in my firm, by the way, where I'm asked to talk to somebody on behalf of a client about their investigation. Perhaps I'm doing an advice issue or a litigation issue. I talk to the investigator and I say, oh, well, can you help me understand, why didn't you interview Peter? It seems like Peter was kind of a key person. I'm probably missing something. I just want to understand. And I hear, I didn't have time to interview Peter. What do you mean? Did you do a thorough investigation or did you not do a thorough investigation? Now, if the client told you, don't interview Peter, put a footnote in the report. I asked to interview Peter and the client said no, right? You are a neutral investigator. Even if you're internal, you're supposed to be independent and unbiased. So if somebody is directing your investigation and telling you that you shouldn't interview someone, you've got to find a way of noting that in the report so that a third party will see that. The answer isn't, I didn't have time. I had another person, when I asked about documents, if they had pulled these emails that seemed really, frankly, critical to the analysis, said to me, well, the company said it would take them 3 weeks to do that, so I just decided to go on without them. And I had to clarify, did you decide that? Did somebody tell you to do that? No. The company said they could give me the emails in 3 weeks, but I had another investigation to start, so I just went with what I had. No, that is not the way you do an investigation. The quality of your investigation is critical. And I know you know this intellectually. I also know that you are human and I am human and we feel pressured and we feel like we've got so much going on. I mean, right now I'm sitting here recording this podcast and I have 800 and some odd emails. I have tried to get back to as many people as I can, as fast as I can. I don't want people to feel like I don't care about them. I only have so many hours in the day, and I don't know how to fix this problem. I literally don't know what to do about it. So what's happening sometimes is I just sit around and agonize over it and kvetch about it and don't fix it. So I understand the pressure. I understand feeling really pressed for time and pressed for resources and not able to do what you want to do. But that is never a reason to do a subpar investigation, ever. And I want you to ask yourself every time you do an investigation, Where are the holes? If I were criticizing my investigation, what would I identify? I had a situation recently where I had one of our other lawyers go through my investigation report and poke as many holes as she could in it. And Christabel, some of you may have worked with her. She's fantastic. She came up with a whole bunch of stuff that I could have done better. All right. And it really helped me to learn for the next investigation. I've been doing this stuff for 25 years, but more than that, 30 something years. But I can still learn. I can still be better. I want to be the very best I can. So I said, go through my report. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. And then when we get there, I'm going to make sure that I understand what your points are, and I'm going to incorporate them into my practice. Maybe I'm going to do things a little differently going forward, which on a couple of issues I am. Okay, another thing that is coming up, whether or not to do an investigation. Now, this is basic, folks. You only do an investigation when you need to know something you don't already know. Let that sink in. You only do an investigation when you need to know something that you don't already know. If you know everything you need to know, you're just not sure what to do about it, that is not when you do an investigation. When you do an investigation, you introduce all kinds of risk of retaliation, of people being upset, of morale problems. You don't want to do an investigation unless you need to do an investigation. So you should always be asking yourself, why am I doing this investigation? What is the thing I need to know that I don't already know? And if you can answer that question, that you do need to know something that you don't already know, by all means, do the investigation. But I have people who call and say, Jen, we need an investigation right now. Okay, great. Tell me what's going on. And then I will ask them, what do you need to know that you don't already know? And many times there'll be silence. And after 20, 30 seconds, they'll say, I guess we know everything we need to know. Great. I can still help you. I just won't help you by doing an investigation. I'll help you by doing some advice. I'll help you by walking you through this. It's not that I can't be here for you. I just want to be here for you in the right context, right? So when you spend time investigating something that doesn't need to be investigated, you introduce all of this risk with no benefit because there's nothing you needed to know that you didn't already know. Another issue that is coming up is bias. I have seen too many situations where individuals are doing investigations where they're too close to the situation. So I have a situation now where an HR person is investigating an issue on their own HR team. No. Why would you want to be in that situation? Don't do that. You don't have to go external. You can borrow somebody from another department and teach them how to do an investigation. Whatever you want to do, but you've got to be clean as a whistle. You've got to be able to say, I came to this with no bias, with no preconceived ideas. And obviously, if you're an internal investigator, or even if you're an external investigator and you've worked with the client a lot, you're going to know things. You're going to know people. You're going to know processes. I'm not saying you have to come cold to every investigation, but you can't investigate your own boss. You can't investigate somebody else in HR when you're in HR. Okay? It just doesn't work. There's no way that you're going to be able to show that you went deep enough, that you asked the right questions, that you were objective enough. So you guys, listen, you are umpires. We are umpires as investigations. Have you ever been to a baseball game where the umpire says, I don't know, the pitcher thought it was a strike, the batter thought it was a ball. I asked 4 coaches, they couldn't agree. I guess it's a he said, I don't really know. No, you've never seen that because that doesn't happen. Because the job of an umpire is to call the ball or the strike. Now, they may get overturned on video replay. They may have somebody object. He may even get called names by somebody in the stand. But he's going to call it, or she's going to call it, ball or strike. When you're an investigator, you're calling balls and strikes. Don't ever have as a finding to your investigation, well, it's inconclusive. Really? It was inconclusive before you got assigned to the investigation. Are you kidding me right now? Now you're going to spend all this time and all these resources and potentially all this money if you're an external investigator. So you can tell the client it's inconclusive. No. It's substantiated or it's unsubstantiated. It's substantiated if it's more likely than not that it occurred, 50% plus a feather. It's unsubstantiated if it's more likely than not that it didn't occur. None of this, they said, he said, she said, I'm not sure, I don't know. It's inconclusive. Your job is to make a factual finding. Make the factual finding. That's your job. That's what you got to do. That's the only reason you've been involved, is to make a factual finding. Now, if the employer also wants you to make a policy determination, that's fine. I tell people, hey, I'm not the best person to make a policy determination because I don't enforce your policy. Even if I wrote your policy and put it in your handbook, I'm still not the one day-to-day enforcing it. So you probably don't want me deciding whether somebody violated policy. But if you do, that's fine. I'll just say I don't enforce the policy, but based on how it's written, this is what I think. That's fine. Do what the client asks you to do, okay? Same thing with scope. A lot of my newer investigators will say, well, I need to understand the scope. And I asked the client, and this client said they want me to look at everything. That's ridiculous. No, actually, it's not. If they tell you the scope is everything, then the scope is everything in the complaint. Get it down on paper and start asking, right? Don't argue with what the scope is. The scope is what the scope is. If the client wants you to look at everything, then look at everything, okay? Don't argue about what the scope is. It doesn't get you anywhere. What do you care, right? You're the independent investigator. You're going to look at what they tell you to look at. Credibility assessments. If you're going to do a credibility assessment, please explain what you're doing. Use the EEOC factors from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They list factors that you should consider when you're making a credibility determination. It's not your gut instinct. It's all of the factors that the EEOC considers, such as, was this witness in a position to actually have firsthand knowledge? Did the witness give you consistent stories when you asked about the issue in several different ways? There are a lot of factors that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission looks at. You need to be looking at those too when you are evaluating credibility. And finally, this is really important. Don't dismiss a complaint just because the witness won't look you in the eye, or the complaint isn't well written, or you have a witness who cries during the investigation. Maybe that makes you believe them more. Be very careful about that. Be very careful about dismissing complaints and dismissing explanations or defenses to complaints unless it's based on fact. You can be questioned by a lawyer or an administrative law judge or a civil judge about why you reached the findings you reached. Be able to explain why you did it. Be able to show what your thought process was. I once had an investigation provided to me, an investigation report written on a Southwest cocktail napkin in little teeny print all around the napkin. Do I think they did a good investigation? Well, I think they reached the right answer. But if somebody is going to be deposed, if that investigator is going to be deposed, writing that report on the cocktail napkin, not a great way to go. If you've got to do that initially, then fine. You take that cocktail napkin, you put it in a memo format, and you provide it as a Word document, right? So these are the kinds of things I've been seeing. I want us to step up our game. This stuff needs to matter to you. And I know it does. I know what happens is that we feel overwhelmed. I feel it myself. I've already told you. I get a lot of emails, a lot of voicemails, a lot of people waiting outside my door. And I love every minute of it because I love my job. I like being part of people's teams, right? But it's easy to feel overwhelmed. That's okay. Take a deep breath, do some box breathing, do whatever you need to do to calm yourself down, and then go get it done. Because you know what, you guys? We can do hard things. We do hard things every single day. You can do this. Don't ever jeopardize your reputation or your employer's reputation or ruin somebody's career because you took a shortcut. You want to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you did the very best you could. That's what it means to be a good investigator. Okay? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Get out there and get it done. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the beautiful day wherever you are. And I will see you next week. Workplace Wake Up, including our guests and hosts, do not provide legal advice in this podcast. Do not act upon any of the information discussed in this podcast without first consulting a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Workplace Wake Up. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your HR and leadership teams. For more insights, training programs, and legal updates, you can visit us at shawlawgroup.com.